that's what we, as a city, we gotta figure it out, you know, I mean, we gotta figure out. Are we doing it right here, 6:30? Okay.
Call the meeting to order. And a flag, say the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. No cards and letters or anything like that, okay? Any amendments to the agenda?
No.
No, all right. And the mayor's report. Well, normally this would be a really super busy week, as Midsummer will be celebrated this weekend. I don't know if anybody has been following the plans that they have. Quite abbreviated. They will not be having the dancing around the maypole down at the old mill and things like that. But they are still trying to organize some things to celebrate the summer solstice. So, and I'm also sure that there will be people in Lindsborg. I mean, I don't know if you've noticed, if you've been downtown over the weekend, you see the quadricycles out and around now, and you see other people walking around. And so I'm sure that we will have guests here this weekend, so certainly welcome everybody. And also say a special thank you if you, when you see the list of people who are working on this. This is a really hard thing for these committees that are working, trying to do something good to celebrate with both hands tied behind their back. So there is a group of people, and I thank them very much for that. All right. I've been thinking as we had this conversation, and thank you for all of you tonight that entered in that conversation about diversity. And so many changes in our world and in our state and even in our little town. These are some thoughts that I had. There is an urgency to do something to get us back to normal. But we are not living in normal times. We have been advised to wear masks, socially distance, wash hands, use sanitizer. Little by little, the message about masks is becoming more clear to everyone. I'm wearing a mask to protect you, and you are wearing a mask to protect me. It is easy to become complacent here in McPherson County and here in Lindsborg. We will be welcoming hundreds of visitors and Bethany College students, faculty, and staff, and these people will be coming from all across the United States. I hope our city council, and I'm sure our staff, will be setting a good example about how to be a good and responsible citizen. One of the things that we will be doing is opening City Hall on Wednesday. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Could you give us the short version of the guidelines about coming into City Hall?
Can I turn that over to Lucas since he's been?
Sure.
Yes.
Yes.
The short version is that we're excited to have people back in City Hall, and we'll be asking people to wear masks. For court, it will be obligatory. For coming in the front desk, it's strongly encouraged. That's really, we're going to be keeping everything as clean as we can and hoping that folks do their part to take care of themselves and city staff.
And is there sanitizer
Yes.
to the public when they walk in the door?
Yes, there is. There's sanitizer at several spots throughout the building and in other city buildings as well.
Right. And what is the status of the city
for the rest of the summer beginning on Saturday.
So, and I'm talking about the ones outside in the parking lot area.
Lucia Park
Lucia Park.
Restaurant, yes, I'm sorry, that's the assumption I made.
Okay, no, that's what I meant. So those will be available, but not until Saturday.
Correct.
Okay, all right. I'm sure that most of you have had conversations with people who are feeling very lonely, people who are scared. The number of people that suffer from depression, this has hit them extremely hard. I am always amazed when I talk with people and realize I didn't know that they had depression and where they were in this whole thing. So I hope as all of us, if you're suffering from depression or somebody in your family, that you are reaching out and asking for help. There are people in our community that can provide that help. And then in the middle of all of this sadness and stuff there's a lot of good news. And I think that that's our challenge right now, is to remember the good news. When you look out to the east of Lindsborg and you see all of those huge machines and all the work being done on Bethany Home's new assisted living, we have things on our agenda tonight about moving forward with the Stockholm Estates. There is new life for the Brunswick lot. There is a revitalized White Peacock, new ownership of the building and the business. She's been working very hard to put a new face to that. There's new artificial turf, thank you to the school district, on the Bethany College football field. And our pretty little Main Street, people are starting to clean up again and wash their windows and sweep up the leaves and plant flowers, and just in time for Midsummer's this weekend. We also have 2 businesses that are for sale and buildings that are for sale. And so there's new opportunities for people to look at us and say, hey, this is maybe a place that I would like to put my business in. I think it's going to take all of us encouraging people every single day when you're having conversations, whether it's Blaine or even Hutchinson or Wichita, wherever you work. You know, Mark, you're in Heston, okay, wherever you work. Kirsten, you're in Salina. Ed, you're on North First Street. But for all of us, I think it's really important that we provide a good face to the community and to the world and say, Lindsborg is still a great place. This is still a good place for us to be. I saw a quote that I think is so wonderful. I don't know how many people read Winston Churchill history, but I think it's great. And his words were, never let a good crisis go to waste. And so here we are in the middle of this crisis, and we have opportunity. And I hope that that's what we, as City Council and as a community, is find a way to help move Lindsborg's future. So thank you very much for allowing me to say those things. And do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Lexi?
Emo.
Yes.
Mark.
Yes.
Blake.
Yes.
Rebecca.
Yes.
Greg.
Yes.
Kirsten.
Yes.
Ed.
Yes.
Motion carries. Some appointments. Do you want to talk about the tree board, Gary?
Just one appointment to the tree board, vacant position. Steve Swenson is on the faculty at Bethany College. He's a transplant to Lindsborg recent. He's been here just a few months. Degree in forestry, extensive experience in forestry and tree matters. Very proud to nominate him to the board.
Do I hear a motion to approve this appointment? So, second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Look forward to meeting Eric Swenson, is that Steve Sweat, Steve, Sticky.
One,
Thank
two
you.
S.
Thank you. Anyway, we have enough Eric Swensons in Lindsborg. This is good that he has a different name. Anyway, look forward to meeting him, and so thank you, Gary, for doing that. We have something from P&Z.
Yes. Planning and zoning has an ordinance recommended to change slightly the fence height variance law. In 2014, the council voted to restrict all fence height variances. In other words, deny any variance of a fence height above 4 feet in the required front yard. And a reminder, corner lots have 2 front yards. Each side facing the street is considered a front yard. The setback's 25 feet. And in 2014, the council denied any variances. In 2017, there was a compromise to allow certain variances to half the side yard setback, 12.5 feet. And that actually has been used a few times. This request is made because, well, let me just say, this year has been phenomenal for permits. We've seen 33 permits to date. Half of them have been for privacy fences or some sort of fence. 3 of them were outright denied because they involved front yard variance requests that slipped beyond the 12.5 foot setback that we allow currently. I just said, no, you cannot get a permit for that fence because you can't even apply for variance. One in particular, the Gormans, said, well, what's it going to take? In fact, they wrote a letter to the Board of Zoning Appeals wanting to sit down and have a hearing, and I explained to them, you can't even get a hearing, you have to change the law. And so they said, how do we do that? And the process is you go to planning and zoning and you ask them to recommend a change in the law, which they did. This has been a process that started back in March, and it takes a long time. In April, planning and zoning discussed the matter and suggested to me to write an ordinance providing at least the ability for someone to make the case for a front yard setback. But they limited it to what we created is the secondary side yard. And I'll take a step back and explain that. In 2017, when we compromised and gave a little bit of latitude, the Planning and Zoning Commission did not want to see front yard fences above 4 feet anywhere. But they did say that there is the suggestion of a side yard on the secondary front yard. In other words, if you look at a block and you see which way the houses are facing, that's a front yard. And in a corner lot, the house faces the majority of the houses on that block. They have what we consider a secondary side yard, what most folks think of as their side yard, whether they live on a corner or not. The Gormans wanted to go beyond the 12.5 feet, and as I said, they were denied that request. Planning and zoning voted to direct me to establish an ordinance that took away that 12.5 foot restriction and leave it open to any location on the secondary side yard. Okay? It's tedious to follow, but that's what planning and zoning did. To do that, they have to have a public hearing and then make a vote on a recommendation. They did so unanimously in May, and that's the ordinance that's attached. It's actually a fairly simple ordinance. All I did was strike the line from the ordinance in 2017 that said restricted to 12.5 feet. I just took that line out. Now, this does not mean that you can ask for a variance anywhere in that front yard, so you're still back behind the house. But you can ask at least the consideration of a variance anywhere on that secondary side. Okay? Now, this does not guarantee that all variance request will be granted. And in fact, the 3 requests that were turned down, 3 permits for secondary side yard fences, the Gormans have a case. I don't know if any of you drove by the site or are familiar with the site. It's across the street from Riverside Park. They have a fairly narrow frontage on their lot, so it's further restricted being on a corner. To be able to build the fence that would provide them a suitable backyard in their mind, they would need to be beyond the 12.5 feet. I think a lot of the whole notion of this aesthetic requirement for planning and zoning is the idea that you look down the street and you want to see front yards. And you don't want encroachments out into that view. But in this case with the Gormans, what's behind them is a vacant temporary parking lot for Riverside Park, and then beyond that is the trail parking lot. This isn't a residential neighborhood in the sense that we think of when we require those fences to be back behind the setback. So I maintain that request at least should be heard by the Board of Zoning Appeals. The other 2, I'd say flat no. In my opinion, they encroach upon that view, that aesthetic quality of the neighborhood where they are, and I would certainly argue the Board of Zoning Appeals to deny those 2 if they were to come back. So what I'm saying is, this isn't every corner lot throughout the community. These are specific cases. I don't know that it's right to deny a person's ability to ask and make a case for hardship. That's my case. I'll answer any questions. It is, like I said, it's a tedious subject. But it seems like 3 out of 16, that's not a large number, but it's unfortunate that I can't even give them an opportunity to argue. So, there you go. I
Okay,
ask that
I'm
you.
sorry,
adopt
I'm
the
new,
ordinance.
so first time this come up for me, but so the planning and zoning committee then decide, they would bring it, what they'd be able to do is the resident would be able to bring their petition or whatever in front to the planning and zoning, and they would decide whether or not they could build the fence.
No, they bring it to the Board of Zoning Appeals, which is a 5-member board that hears cases for variances
Sorry, I think I just.
based on hardship.
Yeah, okay.
And they meet on demand. They're quasi-judicial, is that right, Bill?
Correct.
In the sense that their ruling is immediately, well, it's not immediately, but it is law unless overturned in the district court. It's not subject to legislative action. That's what we
So you're asking this council to do what?
passed the ordinance that would strike the line 12.5 feet restriction in the secondary site.
Has anybody driven by that lot to know what you're talking about? Yes, no,
Yep.
Carter? Okay.
Just for clarification, it would apply to more than just this particular case. The
Yes.
zoning change, so yes.
Okay. Oh, Emily, you said you had driven by, what did you think?
I mean, honestly, the fence
Oh, I'm
is
sorry.
already.
Yeah, let's have a motion
Yeah, sure.
to approve or not approve this.
I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance 5235.
Second.
All right, move in second, thank you. All right, now, Emily.
You drive by that house and you have the guy's house, and if you looked at it from the front, from the street, it looks nice, looks correct, very well kept, everything about the yard's beautiful, aesthetically pleasing. You drive down Lindsborg Street, and where he has his fence is in between his house and his garage. His garage is taller than the fence, the house is taller than the fence comes out a little bit, I'd say maybe 6 feet from the garage towards the street, not terribly bad at all. And it's already, I don't know how tall it is, but it's,
4 feet.
I mean, another 2 feet really isn't gonna make it look detrimental in my opinion. And he's right there where he has a public park, you know, directly south of him. Anybody in that area could probably look in his backyard if they wanted to stand on their tippy toes. anybody in that parking lot get in and out with vehicles, surely, Dan. So I could definitely see a reason for one's privacy, but at the same time, I think that this discussion is, as he kind of said, we're not really dealing, this is an example of an issue. This isn't really the issue at hand. The issue at hand is we're trying to get rid of a thing that limits the Board of Zoning, is that right? Board of Zoning Appeals, limits them from making decisions on this. Because what we would do now would make it where something like this would never reach this point. They would either say yes or no. So I guess really what it comes down to is, do we trust their judgment to make the right choice? Now, I guess if you hear my statement about where that is, and you've seen the lot, and you think that that lot shouldn't have a 6-foot fence, then no, you don't trust their judgment. If you think it can have a 6-foot fence, then you're right on board with the sounds of it.
What drove the council action in 2014? Do we have any note on that? That put, it's still 6 years, but it's relatively recent. What was
The difference in 2014 and today is that one, there wasn't the definition of a primary and a secondary front yard. So, in other words, the request was to allow variance up to the property line in the front yard for up to a 6.5-foot fence, so that if my house is facing this way, I could put it right on the property line, and it was the idea of creating a fortress-looking effect in a community where, you get a whole block of just nothing but fences lining a 6-foot fence, privacy fences lining a sidewalk. That was the driving factor, I believe, in the decision to deny it back in 2014.
I would concur with that.
Blank, that sounds familiar.
Lane was on PNC.
But the act in 2014 was to remove the option. I can't remember what you said at the beginning. It was the change in the ordinance at that time was.
There shall be no fence height variances in the required front yard.
The problem is you're including both parts on a corner lot, and then we changed in 2016?
2017.
Yeah, 2017, you said we changed it from a 25-foot setback to a 12.5 or something.
Only in the secondary side yard.
Yeah, which created the definition that you now have more than one yard. You don't just have a primary. So we're refining it.
The idea of primary and secondary came from a community, I believe in northeastern Kansas. I didn't make it up, but it stole it from somewhere. But it meant that conceptually it was what we were looking for as a planning zone.
One of the concerns, and I think it was voiced in 17 or 14, I don't remember, was about what do we want our community to look like? People walk, and you want to just be walking past fences, and you don't ever see anybody's yard or anybody's house. What does that say about us as a community? And so that was a big concern,
Yes.
I think. And when I drove by this property and thought about it, for me, on a side yard like that, it is always line of sight. And in knowing that's a park, that's potential of development at the old mill and even a more busy area and all that kind of stuff, there is a stop sign on both Lindsborg, is that the street?
Yes.
Lindsborg Street.
Lindsborg,
Yeah.
First Street.
Yeah, and so that's good. And so, I don't know if people haven't, Ed, you said you drove by it.
Yeah, as far as that line of sight for traffic goes, that fence is far enough back from First Street. Yeah, I can't see that would be a problem.
Well, in the proposed ordinance strictly prohibits
Right.
6.5-foot fences that would encroach the required line of sight. And that by sight triangle in a residential area, and we're in a unique situation here, so I don't know off the top of my head. But in a residential area, you go to the center of the intersection, you go 90 feet one direction, 90 feet the other direction, and draw the hypotenuse, and there is your line of sight that you cannot have any obstructions in.
We're talking a lot about the one property, but we're really just talking about allowing people to bring this to the board and trusting that those individuals can make a good decision.
I hesitate to bring that example to the table, and I'm not making an argument based on that example, but I am saying that it was the action of the Gormans that brought it to the table. That this was not a staff-driven issue, it wasn't even a planning and zoning-driven issue, it was brought to the attention of the Planning and Zoning Commission by a resident who wanted the law to be changed.
Was the last time that we had something like this Jim Beck's property? Or was there one in between then and now?
No, there was a variance in 2014 at Jim Beck's residence. That variance also included the variance of an 8-foot fence.
Yeah, because I know his was quite the ordeal, because of where his is at. For anyone who doesn't know, if you're at People's Bank and Trust and you go east and you have that house that was an old church, that was his residence. The way the windows are, the heights and everything, a huge fence went in there that was not desirable, but at the same time, it's what had to be done to provide any privacy.
Okay, any other discussion? Roxy?
Rick,
Yes.
Kirsten,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Engel,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
Rebecca.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion's approved. Next item, Chris?
Nope.
Oh, I'm sorry, no, it's me.
Yes.
This is the diversity resolution that we referenced in our discussion during our study session. This is resolution 05-20, and I would like to read it. This is a resolution supporting and promoting diversity and inclusiveness within the city of Lindsborg. Whereas Lindsborg is a community of caring people who have created a healthy, safe, and secure place for people of all race, geographic, ethnic, economic, religious, and lifestyle backgrounds to live, learn, work, raise their children, and age with dignity. And whereas fundamentally, tolerance is a personal decision that comes from an attitude that is learnable and embraceable, a belief that every person on earth is a treasure, vital to the health and prosperity of all. And whereas one of the core values of the city of Lindsborg is to treat all persons with respect and dignity. And whereas Lindsborg is a community promoting tolerance and inclusion while focusing on how we interact with our families, our neighbors, our visitors, our guests, and our co-workers by respecting them and ourselves. And whereas the city of Lindsborg values all of its citizens and recognizes that many ethnicities have contributed to the strength of character of the citizens of Lindsborg. And whereas the city of Lindsborg recognizes the strength in diversity and inclusiveness of its citizenry. And whereas we, the people of Lindsborg, in keeping with the principle of equal civil rights for all, unequivocally oppose any manifestation of hatred and prejudice towards any group or individual in our community. Now therefore be it resolved that the city of Lindsborg and its representatives shall not condone or tolerate any form of discrimination on the basis of race, color, religious creed, age, familial status, national origin, sexual orientation, gender, gender identity or expression, physical or mental disability, or veteran status. And therefore be it further resolved that we stand together with all people of good faith in our community and acknowledge we have the power to change our attitude, to overcome our ignorance and and to influence our children, our peers, and our neighborhoods, and that we manifest these values with action. This is adopted and passed by the governing body of the City of Lindsborg this 15th day of June 2020. Do I hear a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? We have to have a oh, yes, please.
Peg,
Yes.
Kirsten,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
Rebecca,
Yes.
Blaine,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Emo.
Yes.
Motion is, the resolution is approved. Thank you. And I will sign something eventually. All right. The next item on the agenda is about our new Stockholm Estates project. Chris?
Good evening. As continued part of the infrastructure build-out, we need to start getting some materials coming. So when the project is ready to start construction, we'll have everything on hand and be able to proceed with the work. So the first item we have is the water line for the project. That will include 3,200 linear feet of 8-inch water pipe, numerous valves and fittings, and fire hydrants to go along with the project. So we're looking for a motion to approve the quote from Municipal Supply Company in the amount of $50,705.27 for the water line and materials to install the water service for Phase 1 infrastructure for Stockholm Estates.
Do I hear a motion to approve this?
Motion to approve.
Your second?
Second.
Discussion.
So can you explain how this works? Like, it says the developer pays 75%, but we buy it, how does that work? Is that, they pay it back, or?
We will purchase that and invoice the material back to them at that point.
Any other questions? Roxy?
Blaine,
Yes.
Rebecca,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
Kirsten,
Yes.
Peg,
Yes.
Emo,
Yes.
Mark.
Motion is approved. Next item, Chris?
Along the same lines, the next item is the electrical materials that we need to get ordered. That is the item of more concern. Some of the lead times with some of those components are 8 to 10 weeks out, possibly 12 weeks. So we need to get, that's the more critical item we need to get coming, so those are on hand. We received 3 quotes on that. All came back fairly close. So we're looking for a motion to approve a bid from Annixter Incorporated in the amount of $62,441.95 to purchase materials for Stockholm Estates Electric Services.
Do I hear a motion to approve?
So
Second?
Second.
Okay. And seconded. Any discussion? Have we ever worked with Annixter Inc.?
Yeah, we purchase items from them all the time.
Any other discussion? Roxy?
Kirsten,
Yes.
Rick, Rebecca,
Yes.
Blaine,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Emo,
Yes.
Peg.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Chief?
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and staff. Quite frankly, the timing of this request to move to Lexipol for our police department's policy management system could not have come at a more unique time given what's going on in our nation right now. As we continue to look forward to improving the way the police department operates in our community, there's no better place than for us to start, when I say us, I mean the police department, to start with looking at our policy manual. The goal is to bring our department policies up to date and in line with current law enforcement standards and practices in a timely fashion. Lexipol provides a customizable, state-specific, and web-based law enforcement policy that is written by legal and law enforcement professionals with added integrated training component to help our police department and our officers operate more efficiently and effectively. Lexipol provides daily training bulletins and exercises to help bring our new policies into practice through real-life scenario-based training exercises that emphasize on high-risk, low-exposure scenarios based on that training and events. The manual captures electronic signatures to acknowledge policy updates by each and every person on the department. And also, it keeps track of all our daily training records. So anytime we train on that policy or any specific part of it, it tracks it, so we have records of it. Finally, by subscribing to the Lexipol policy management system, we would receive a 10% credit towards our police liability insurance for the city, so we get a 10% discount for that. So I'm recommending to the city council to approve this year the $1,348 for the prorated annual subscription fee for 2020 and continued annual subscription service with Lexipol for our policy management.
Do I hear a motion to approve this?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Okay, you say prorated, so.
Because we're entering the middle of the year,
Right, so it'll be, and so we would do this on a yearly basis?
it would be renewed on an annual basis, and what I was able to negotiate with them was a prorated rate for 6 months plus 50% off. And then the following year would be 30%, and the following year after that would be 15%.
So what's the special law enforcement trust fund?
Asset forfeiture in drug cases, whether it's cash or whether it's items that are forfeited during drug cases, the revenue from those items are put into a special law enforcement trust, and they can only be used for specific, they can't be used for personnel expense, they have to be used for equipment or this type of service.
Is this more in line with like what you've seen in other places you've worked?
Yes, I've used this before from my previous agency, but in Kansas, we've got 60 different agencies that are currently using it, and it's also endorsed by the Kansas Association of Chiefs of Police. It is in every state right now. This company is, as I went on and tried to look for a variety of different companies that would do this, every time I put in any type of police policy, this company was the number one that would come up time and time again.
When was the last time we looked at our policy? I mean, what are we operating on now?
In some instances, the policy is over 25 years old. And
So
in some instances, it's as less as 9. But there are some significant issues with our current policy.
I'm glad you looked into it, found that.
So then once it's adopted, it just basically supersedes all of the, I mean, how does that?
What will take place is I will work with the company and they will give us state-specific policies. So it's specific to Kansas. So we'll have several different levels of policies. So you'll have those policies that are controlled by the federal laws. You have other policies that are state-specific, and then other ones that are general practice for law enforcement. And I will work with the company on all those to make it customizable to how we do business, because not every police department does things the same way. We have different titles, we have different positions, and so I sit down and I will have Scott and Sergeant Wolf with me, and we will make sure that the policies reflect how we do business here in Lindsborg, but comply with either state, federal, or best practices. And the nice thing is, we go over this, instead of reviewing it at 25 years or 9 years, we do updates at least 1 to 2 times a year, plus on an emergency basis as laws come out. So they will send them to me, I review them, look at them, form them to our community, and then we push it out to the department.
And then you'd mentioned earlier, once this policy is adopted, the new policies are adopted, you're playing with those policies.
Yeah, exactly. Once we approve it and I go over training with the officers, we will post it on our website, and that way the community can see what our policy manual says. There's nothing to be hidden there. This is to be as transparent as we possibly can, so the community knows what guidelines we're going by, and ensure that we're following them.
Any other comments?
Mark?
you very much.
Thanks.
The police are certainly in the news. Very good time. Okay, Greg, you're talking about fire alarms?
Yes, when we changed phone service providers from our former provider to going with IdeaTech, which is straight voice over internet phone system, we no longer had a communication for our monitoring service for our fire alarm systems in the building you're currently in, the Sunstrom or City Hall. The fire alarm monitoring systems that are currently in place require an analog phone line, and we do not have any analog phone lines. We're all over the internet. So to have that monitoring service in place, we need the installation of IP communicators for both the Sunstrom Conference Center and City Hall. The cost for the Sunstrom Conference Center is to install is $2,056.06. For City Hall, it's $2,194.88 for a total amount of $4,250.94. The difference in the two amounts is dealing with the fact that under code, the fire alarm system and the communicator has to be hardwired. It cannot just be a plug-in outlet. So we have to, or as part of the as part of the contract, it includes the installation of that hardwire line. Well, to connect in City Hall, it has to run a greater distance than it does in this building. It goes over a wall in this building. It goes across the building in City Hall to install that line. So it's just a difference in material and labor for the installation.
So that is a motion to approve 4250.94 to Johnson Controls.
That's what I'm asking, yes.
All right. Do I hear a motion? Ms. Lopez?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Just because we don't have a phone system anymore, I don't even know what phone is. Southwestern Health somewhere.
Well, AT&T, well, they are available. AT&T has priced themselves. We quit using AT&T years ago because of the analog phone line service that they provided became cost prohibitive. And they don't want to be in the analog phone business, and that's why it became cost prohibitive. We were using Cox, but it was less expensive to go with a straight internet phone system through IdeaTech. They don't offer an analog service, but I talked to them. They provided the opportunity to replace our whole alarm system, which would have been more than just putting in IP communicators. So looked at the option of just the IP communicators. Johnson Controls is the company that has our fire alarm system, that's, well, the Simplex Grinnell, which was purchased by Johnson Controls, are the systems we have in place. They also provide the monitoring service under our current contract.
Rick, do you know how much those analog phone lines are per line, per month or a year?
I didn't even.
I mean, typically, I'm guessing that just the cost savings and not having to pay for those lines, these IP communicators probably pay for themselves each one in a year, just based on the charge you're paying for your monthly line.
I do know when we dropped AT&T, we were paying maybe $25 a line, and it was jumping up to about $400 a line. But our contract expired, and it jumped that much, which prompted us to look at Cox with a PRI system, primary radio interface, I mean, we've gone through analog to primary radio to full phone system over the internet.
I see that this quote was good for 45 days. Will they have more?
The plan is, if this is approved, to have it sometime this week.
So analog phone line works with the power tower, right?
Yes.
Haven't had one in a while. Does this work with the power tower?
Yes, it has battery backup. Because the phone line would work without the battery backup. I'm not sure the fire alarm system itself would work. So it has battery backup to the whole system, not just the line.
I'm guessing all those programs that you see advertised on TV 10 years ago and stuff, where you connect a phone through your computer, that's not analog to digital in some way, shape, or form? I mean, could you have something, I can't think of the name of what the heck it was called?
Easy Jack, is that what you're talking
Something
about?
like that, you know, I mean, like, what's so much more
Easy.
sophisticated about this? Like,
Well, part of the difference is we have to comply with code. I'm not sure that type of system would comply with code.
That is a big part of the challenge, is complying with the code. And the reality is that this scenario that Greg laid out with people going away from analog lines started about 10 years ago. And there's a lot of places that don't have any analog lines anymore at all. And the codes took them a while to even catch up to the new technology. Because the code, at the time, when these facilities had fire alarm systems put in, required that you have 2 analog lines to the fire alarm system as part of the NFPA code. And the reason is in case one failed, it would switch over and dial out on the other one. If one got cut, it would dial out on the other one. And it tests itself automatically. So the codes are in place now to allow for IP communicators or even cell communicators. But yeah, you have to meet certain criteria in order to meet the requirements.
great.
Any other discussion? Roxy?
Okay.
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Rebecca? Yes. Blaine?
Abstain.
Mark?
Yes.
Neil?
Yes.
Motion carries. City administrator report. Do you have one?
Very brief. We finish making note here. As mentioned earlier, public access to all city buildings will be beginning Wednesday, 6/17. The last of our safety measures is being installed tomorrow morning. So we will open to public access on Wednesday the 17th, beginning with normal business hours. During COVID-19, there was the waiver of disconnects. We've talked about that. That waiver has expired. Just why I've been giving you updates on past dues. Right now, past due accounts, we have 162. Of those, 33 would be subject to cutoff if they don't make contact prior to June 29th to either pay or make arrangements. We will be disconnecting their service. The other 129 are past due. This number is not out of the ordinary for this time of the month. 162 sounds like a lot. When it actually comes to disconnects, will probably be 10 or fewer for the month typically. But of the 33, and I don't have a dollar amount for you at this time, but of the 33, where that number goes, I don't know whether that will be the same or whether some of those will have their arrangements made prior to the disconnect on June 29th. One of the things I would like to encourage you, if you have not done, and those within the community, if they have not done it, is complete your census. Right now, as a state, Kansas ranks 13th in the nation at 65.3% of the households reporting. Let me get to, let me tell you the county here in just a second. In Kansas, Johnson County is number one at 74%. Statewide, Minnesota is number one at 70.9. As I said, Kansas is 65.3. We go to city rankings. Lindsborg is 26th, if I remember correct. 26th at 76.7%. Well, that's a great percentage. We'd like to get that to 100. I mean, it's very important for political representation, for funding opportunities, not only to Lindsborg, but also to the county and also to the state of Kansas from a programming standpoint. So I would like to encourage you, if you haven't done it, for the listening audience to complete it if they haven't done it. And if you have, please help spread the word to others so that they complete it. It's very important. It happens once every 10 years. This is our opportunity now. So I'll get off my soapbox on that. Beginning in July, we're going to reinvigorate the stormwater projects that we've been working on, that being the diversion channel west of town, also Cow Creek as it goes through town. The majority of the engineering is completed. Now it's on the ground work by staff, securing easements, moving towards the bidding process, things like that. So we'll be moving forward on that in July. With that, I do not have anything else.
Thank you. Are there any others?
You had commented earlier about the Brunswick lot having a new line. What is that new line? I'm not aware.
Well, it was purchased by the Red Barn,
Okay.
and so I think they're still discussing what vision that they have for it. But it's not an empty, I shouldn't say that it is an empty lot, but it has ownership. And so, that's all, I think we know at this point. Farley's restaurant is for sale, the building and the restaurant. So if you know of anybody that would like to own a restaurant, we need these restaurants. Bethany College will not be opening the Swedish Crown, but they are looking to work a lease process with somebody. So again, that's another golden opportunity for somebody that wants to do that in town. So any others? You all I guess there's another COVID positive test in McPherson County today. So we're up to 40, and not anything, but that's where it is. So no others?
I have another, I just thought of,
Okay.
are we doing the pool?
Huh?
The pool. My lifeguard,
Yes. Normally we have a staff of 30 lifeguards for the summer. We will have a staff of 20. One, we have a shorter season. Two, many of the summer activities that kind of disperse our lifeguards throughout the season where they're unavailable to work have been canceled. So the availability of those 20 is a lot greater than when we have 30 lifeguards. So those lifeguards that are able to work this summer will have the opportunity to get more hours in a shorter period of time than they normally do. So yes, scheduled for the 26th. The hours will be 1 to 7. There'll be no swim lessons. There will be no lap swim, no water aerobics, no season passes. Either pay a daily fee, $3 for those under 18, 18 and over, $4 a day, or you can get a 10-day, but 10 punch pass for $27.50.